Can you tell me maybe a little bit about some of the places throughout the state that you all will go to and have gone to over the course of your childhood?
We would go down to Rainy Mountain down in southwest Oklahoma. That's where most of my Kiowa relatives are from. We would go to Tahlequah and have Cherokee holidays. So those two places I grew up going every summer, seeing family, doing traditions like stomp dances and powwows and eating fried bread and just spending the all night out playing card games or listening to the drum. I took a ball everywhere I went. You never know, especially with all my cousins and relatives. They all played basketball too, so you never know. You find a basketball goal and you go out there and just start playing, having fun at first, and then it starts getting competitive.
When do you remember falling in love with the game?
Uh, I would say whenever I went out to play in Henrietta, it was an Indian ball tournament out there, and I was eighth going into ninth grade. And I think, I just had so much fun and it was so competitive. And, we lost one of our first games on the tournament day and we had to come through the losers bracket. And that was just a grind, but it was just so competitive. And the people I was with and my family around and winning the whole thing was just excited me so much. And I just, never went back.
Do you still have a vivid memory of that gym and what it's like out in Henrietta basketball tournament as an eighth grader? What can you set the scene for me a little bit there?
Um, just all natives.
Yeah.
It was an all native tournament. You're hearing Lulus, you're hearing people gripe but at the refs, and it's getting chippy, and guys starting throwing little cheap shots, and it's getting real rowdy. It's getting late, and then we pull away at the end, and it's funny, actually, I had a camp last year at Henrietta, the same gym. So just trying to show love to everywhere that showed love to me first.
I mean, you're the definition of a homegrown player, and really that's what's happening with this Thunder team. And you guys are not looking externally. All of your growth has come from within. It's going to continue to come from within. What does that feel like to you all to kind of know all you got to do is look around the locker room and know that that's you got what you need in this building to get where you want to go?
I think a lot of times, we make it complicated for ourselves, thinking that we have to go and search different places for things that are going to fulfill us in life. But just knowing where you come from, knowing the things that shaped you and, the beliefs you stand on or where you come from. I think everybody has a really solid foundation in their lives, and solid families with them, and me included. And I think, all of us come together and have something in common, anything's possible.
Did you have that perspective when you were playing for the Enid Outlaws, or is that something that's grown over the course of the last few years?
It definitely has grown. Being young, coming out of college, being a, young, ambitious kid, not knowing what was going to happen. Definitely took some learning and some experience. I met a lot of great people along the way from different areas of Oklahoma, and I'm just grateful for what I have.
What has this been like for you over the last few years, and now you're heading in to just more opportunities here with the Thunder, and you're continuing to get all this love?
It's been a blessing. It's just got to remind myself how grateful I am for this organization, and being able to grow from a young kid to now being in Oklahoma, all over parts, and be able to, express the love with everybody, all the fans and the community. It's just been like nothing short than a blessing. Every kid dreams this, and I dreamt this growing up. And you never hear stories like this. So, I'm grateful for God and looking forward to the opportunities in front of me.
Welcome into the Thunder basketball universe. The voice that you just heard there, that was Lindy Waters III. And we are in Native American Heritage Month. And so we had a chance to actually sit down with Lindy during our trip in Phoenix to talk a little bit deeper about some of the stories that you just heard there. That's going to be a little bit later in the show, and you're going to want to stick around because there were some incredible, incredible stories and sound bites that he just kind of revealed to us that we had no idea about. And so we want to thank Lindy ahead of time for taking the time to sit down with us. And then also later in the show, we're going to get you all geared up for what's down the pipe for OKC. The team just returned from a quick 2-game road trip out to Sacramento and then to Phoenix. And we got to get into this road trip, Gallo, because it was kind of an interesting 2 games for OKC, right? They played Sacramento and they didn't really play the style and the way that they wanted to play, but then they really turned the tides and they course corrected big time in Phoenix.
Yeah, this is a night-to-night process that the Thunder is dealing with. You come off a really strong performance at home against Cleveland, and then you got to hit the road again. And what happens? You go to a really hungry Sacramento environment, and the Thunder didn't have its 98-mile-an-hour fastball. It had its 93-mile-an-hour fastball.
Mm-hmm.
And in the NBA, on the road against a tough Western Conference team, that's not good enough.
Right.
And so this was a really cool opportunity for this Thunder team, being as young as it is, second youngest team in the league, to have to turn around, face another veteran experienced team in the Western Conference in Phoenix. And boy, in that fourth quarter, OKC was throwing triple digits.
They sure were.
Yeah.
They really put their foot on the gas, completely slammed the door shut on that game, and showed a lot of their identity in that fourth quarter. And so we're going to get into that a little bit later. But first, we had a couple of really good quotes that came out of this road trip. We were able to talk to a lot of the guys. So we're going to have a little segment of You Can Shay That again. Nick, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, well, first of all, Lindy did a great job kind of setting the table for this game, because those quotes that we got from him earlier in the year, some of the best stuff that really set the table for this interview that Paris was teasing earlier. So thank you, Lindy, for that kind of background on your heritage. And we're so grateful for the opportunity to be able to dig deeper. This quote is from Shay, and this is all basketball and just like Thunder ethos right now.
Yeah.
And this quote is about Mark Daigneault, and Shay says, "He lets us walk through the fire. He lets us figure it out. We have a lot of guys on this team that have a high basketball IQ. He lets us play off a feel, and coach is really good about letting us figure it out on our own sometimes. Not every time. Mark Daigneault will certainly call timeouts, get the team reoriented and adjusted, but Mark and this coaching staff and this organization seem to have really generated a nice process for determining what experiences this Thunder group needs to take on, not completely by themselves, of course, supported, but these are things that they're going to have to figure out on the fly."
Yeah.
And that game in Phoenix on Sunday night, prime example of that, because the Thunder was in this back and forth dogfight with the Suns throughout the game. There are many ways in which Phoenix was kind of taking advantage of the Thunder. The Thunder was taking advantage of Phoenix. And in the fourth quarter, OKC had kind of seen enough of those pictures throughout the first 36 minutes that something clicked. And they're like, okay, we figured it out. We walked through the fire of those first 3 quarters dealing with Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal, and the size and physicality of Yusuf Nurkic and Drew Eubanks. And in the fourth quarter, the Thunder kind of unlocked what it needed to unlock and was able to outscore the Suns 31-13, including a 12-0 burst at the end to really seal this game.
I love that you chose that quote, because I think there are a couple of more quotes that kind of tie into this. And one of them was Coach Daigneault saying, we want to develop critical thinkers out there on the floor. And that was in response to a question about, do you tell the guys to go double team or is that just based off of feel? And Mark basically said, we kind of let them do what they think is right out there on the floor, similar to letting a guy like Cason Wallace pick and choose when he wants to pick up guys full court or when he wants to pick them up at half court. And this Thunder coaching staff wants to develop critical thinkers who aren't robotic, who aren't looking to the sidelines to wait for a call, and are out there making the right basketball play. And it shows up big time in times like the fourth quarter against Phoenix, where they're double teaming Kevin Durant or they're sending multiple bodies to Yusuf Nurkic, and guys are out there just making the right play, reading the defense and making the play based off of that. And these guys, they have such high basketball IQs, and it's really showing. And so I imagine that gives Coach Daigneault a lot of confidence to just let these guys go out there, go through the possession, go through the play, go through adversity, knowing that they've gone through several experiences now where they've seen some pictures of how to dig themselves out of adversity and get back on the right track and course correct, so they can kind of go through these things and kind of figure these things out on the fly.
That critical thinking skill that you're talking about reminds me of just school and your teacher's saying, we're trying to help you learn how to learn.
Yeah.
Not learn what date, the Magna Carta was signed. That's not that important. The Thunder, doing everything it possibly can, playing 45 minutes, playing its starters 45 minutes last night to win that Phoenix game is not the goal of this season. It's not the goal of the trajectory of this team. The goal is, can we put these guys in situations where they can learn how to learn in game, learn how to make adjustments themselves in game. If you get into the playoffs and deep into the playoffs, you can't have your coach call a timeout every 2 minutes and say, hey, this is the thing that we're missing out on right now.
Yeah.
Those are things that you've got to bank on your players being able to have seen enough of these scenarios, have gone through enough of them, and to learn how to learn about what's happening in the game. And I think this is a prime example of exactly that.
It's interesting because, Coach Dagnall, he comes from an educational background. His parents are educators, and you see that, I feel like, show up in his coaching style, how he approaches teaching these guys, young players who are learning and developing, and how these guys are absorbing what he's saying, and how it all works together. It all showing up in his coaching style.
Yeah, and I think that's why he's earned so much respect and confidence from this team. He was joking last night before the game about his own basketball playing prowess and how it just barely pales in comparison to the likes of LeBron James and Kevin Durant. But to that point, like, Mark has earned the players' trust and respect and the organization's trust and respect by the dignity by which he carries himself and the approach that prioritizes holding the players to a standard that they hold themselves to, and demanding of the players what they would demand of themselves if they were coaching themselves. And so there's these types of things when Mark understands he can't just be dictating, that he has to be walking alongside these players as they learn for themselves. That makes a massive, massive difference. And I think anybody, watching feels that way too about, learning how to drive. If your parents holding onto the steering wheel while you're driving, are you really learning? No, there's so many of these things in life that work exactly the same way.
Yeah. And you can really tell from how the players respond to him and how they speak about him that they really appreciate his approach as a head coach as well. All right. Here's my quote. I haven't told Nick who my quote is from.
Uh-oh.
But I feel like you're going to get it. Okay. But it's 3 words.
See, I knew you were going to go do some, I think it was going to be like, we ball. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
It was good. No, I'm just kidding. It was strange.
It was strange. It was strange.
That's only like the first part of the quote. I feel like the rest of it would give it away.
Is this Lou Dort?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Dang it.
Okay.
Dang
Nice.
it.
Our producer, Matt Bishop, had money on me, so congratulations. I'm not sure how much you just won. But
Congrats, Matt Bishop.
fractions of pennies heading your way.
We should know that Nick is just an encyclopedia of knowledge, and he is going to figure it out. Yes, that was Lou Dort, and we were talking to him post-practice at Arizona State University,
nice.
And this was just such a wholesome experience for me because, Lou, we saw him in Montreal, right? And how much pride he had in being back in his hometown and all the love he was getting from being in his hometown. But driving up to Arizona State and then walking into this practice facility, you walk in through like a back door, and the first thing that you see is a gigantic mural of Lou Dort. Yeah. I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay, this is the house that Lou Dort built right here. But then you see James Harden on the other wall over here. But you see Lou Dort first. And I'm like, this guy clearly, like, and you think about the journey that Lou Dort had and the path that he's taken to get to where he is right now. That picture of Lou Dort, that was clearly a young Lou Dort. See, is so different from the Lou Dort that's on the floor here now. And just to kind of have both of those guys in the same room was really cool. And then Lou afterwards and after practice, he was like, it was a little strange having my gigantic picture up on the wall, like looming over us while we're practicing, but it was pretty cool.
Well, I also have to say, I have a feeling that the athletic department at Arizona State wasn't exactly scrambling to get that poster made
Right.
in the aftermath of the 2019 NBA draft.
Yep.
When Lou Dort went undrafted. And so, having him front and center like that, right behind the basket, that goes to show the journey that he has undertaken and the path that he's carved out for himself that not that long ago, less than 5 years ago, this is a guy that was most certainly not going to be one of those guys alongside James Harden and Byron Scott and Fat Lever and some of the other guys that they have up there on that wall in that practice facility. I have a feeling the athletic department was not anticipating Lou being one of those guys and being such a prominent one too.
Yeah, and you could tell. We were talking to Lou after, and I was like, what sort of memories are flooding back to your head as you're walking through the exact same places that you played while you were here? And he was like, man, so many memories. Like, I used to have to come to practice on a scooter every day because I didn't have a car, and I was only here for 1 year, but this year at Arizona State meant so much to me, and everyone poured into me, and it just being here just means so much. And Coach Dagnall just pointing out how loyal Lou is to the places that he has walked through. You think about his time in Montreal and just how loyal he is to that city and how much pride he has in the city. And then, of course, Arizona State. And he's like, we're reaping the benefits of that with the Thunder, too. Yeah. He is so proud to rep Thunder across his chest. And it means so much to him to be a part of this organization and a part of this team. And we're feeling that every time he's out there.
Yeah. And it's what draws his teammates to him, too, is because they know, in a really, really big picture way, like, he has their backs completely and is extremely loyal to them and is going to put himself and his body on the line, sacrifice his, shots and stats and everything so that he can be defending Kevin Durant all night and, putting himself in a situation where he had 5 fouls in that game against Phoenix. And, he was less focused. You could tell he was clearly like a little bit less focused on, hunting shots or anything like that because he had an extremely difficult job to do. And that really helped, free up some of the Thunder's other scorers to be able to make plays. You saw Shea, he had 35, J-Dub had 31, and it's not just like those things occurred. Yeah. It was a 5-man unit that helped create that, and Lou recognizing what his responsibilities were on that night and recognizing that he didn't exactly have it going from 3. Well, he could find other ways to help manufacture points for his teammates. And
it just goes to show like where his head is at, his character, the type of person that he is. And I just thought that was such a special moment for not just Lou, but like the team to experience that with Lou and see how much Lou means to that university. I just thought that was so special. Okay. Shall we go to this 2-game road trip really quick and just talk a little bit more about some of the highlights from this trip? The Thunder was coming off of a near wire-to-wire win against Cleveland. That was a really good game. They won 128-120. It was a big win inside of Paycom Center, the final game of a 6-game homestand. And then they head out on the road for a 2-game West Coast road trip starting in Sacramento. And as we all know, Sacramento, they're obviously coming off of last year where they were a really, really tough team in the West. But they were struggling offensively. They were playing without De'Aaron Fox. And so they were kind of trying to figure out their footing without their point guard out there. And over the past 3 games before they played the Thunder, they were really struggling. They scraped 1 win right before the Thunder walked into the building. And you could tell they were trying to figure themselves out. But they were on their home floor. It was their City Edition night. It was their in-season tournament night. They had the new floor. So they had some mojo starting to come into this game. And the Thunder had a really big test ahead of them walking in the door.
And before the game, Sacramento's head coach Mike Brown said very explicitly that the Kings were absolutely focused on and putting a ton of emphasis into the in-season tournament game. One of their members of their coaching staff showed a video to the Kings before the game about all the things that you can buy with the money that comes from potentially winning the in-season tournament. They talked about, not dribbling the ball out at the end of they actually ended up accidentally doing this, but they talked about the strategic things in terms of like point differential in the in-season tournament and all that kind of stuff. The Thunder has taken a much more even-keeled approach. I only say this because the Kings were on a high in this game. They were going all out in a different way that is like not sustainable for an all 82 game approach. And this was a a great learning opportunity for the Thunder to recognize something that Mark Daignault talks about, which is sort of having that emotional intelligence about where your emotional or competitive empathy.
Yes,
excuse me,
competitive
empathy for where your opponent is mentally coming into a game, and the Thunder probably did not quite have that calibrated in that game. Shots weren't falling. That's a whole other issue that is going to happen throughout the course of a game. The Thunder didn't quite stick with what they needed to stick with and do it with the intensity and focus that they needed to for 48 minutes. That is bound to happen on the road throughout the course of an 82-game season, but an excellent opportunity early after this long homestand to have that lesson, confronted right to their face.
Yeah, and the Thunder got out to a really slow start against Sacramento. I mean, really throughout the night, the offensive rhythm just wasn't there for OKC, but they got out to a slow start. The Kings threw the first punch, really drew an early, I think a 11 or 17-point lead in the first quarter. I can't remember exactly. 17 in the first quarter. 17-point lead, which is a huge hill to try to climb on the road against a team who is playing with that sort of emotion coming into the game. And so the Thunder had a lot of course correcting to do in that game. The bright spot here was that OKC, they did battle back. Yeah. They showed a lot of grit, they showed a lot of toughness, and they showed a lot of poise and composure, putting themselves in a position to try to win the game down the stretch. It was down to one possession in the fourth quarter, and then it just got away from them in the end. Overall, very low-scoring game. The Thunder's defense is what kept them in the game ultimately, but a lot that they were going to have to pull from and apply going up against another very potent offense in the Phoenix Suns, who were playing without Devin Booker, but still had Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal, who was playing his third game for the Suns.
Yeah, and the Thunder basically used every resource at its disposal to get the job done against those guys. In the first quarter, it was 29-29. It was a pretty really fun back and forth affair in terms of just executing, shot making, getting the spots on the floor, attacking. Both teams kind of using their own weapons at their disposal. The Thunder, I remember one play distinctly where it was a sideline out of bounds play for Phoenix, and OKC passed Kevin Durant off from Lou Dort to Jalen Williams to Chet Holmgren, all on one defensive possession. And you felt good about whoever was on him in that situation, despite the fact that he's, an all-time incredible player in this league, a future Hall of Famer, no doubt about it. And the Thunder had to do stuff like that all night. They had to cover for each other. They had to be there. That specific play, ended with Chet Holmgren having both feet on the floor and blocking a shot. So just so you know where like the Thunder's defensive mindset was at early on. It took, as we talked about, 3.5 quarters for the Thunder to really twist that lock and unlock what it needed to. The last 6 minutes and 40 seconds, Phoenix did not have a made field goal. The entire last 6:40 of that game. OKC was absolutely ferocious down the stretch, not playing outside of itself, but in its shell and limiting Phoenix to one shot. That was absolutely critical to sealing this game. And then on the other end of the floor, the Thunder just executed. Shea was able to get to some spots when they were overloaded on him. They swung it over to J-Dub, and he just attacked second side.
And the beauty of this game was that you mentioned like it took 3 quarters really for OKC to just kind of take control and just kind of like put it in a second gear and close the door on this game. But throughout those first 3 quarters, OKC never let the game get out of hand, right? Like Phoenix would make a run. Kevin Durant would do something great. Bradley Beal would go make a bucket. Yusuf Nurkic was having a little bit of a night as well. But OKC responding to those runs, staying composed, staying to their identity on the offensive end, getting downhill. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being very balanced offensively. We saw the same thing from J-Dub with his first 30-point game of the season. And then I remember in the third quarter, Josh Giddey had 5 assists in the third quarter alone. He was just out there like facilitating very well, finding his teammates. I remember one, he attacked downhill to the middle of the floor. I think Yusuf Nurkic came up and helped on him. Lou cut right behind Yusuf Nurkic, and Josh just kind of like dropped it off to him. And I was like, that is a fantastic play. And especially, that was a couple of plays before that, Lou had attacked downhill and I think got blocked or something like that. And it's just the poise and composure to just play the possession in front of you and let the game tell you what to do and approach it with confidence. That's what OKC did throughout the entire night. And in the fourth quarter, when suddenly Phoenix's shot stopped falling
Yep.
and Thunder was still keeping their foot on the gas, finding their opportunities, sticking to their identity, that's when the separation started to happen. And it all happened because of the cumulative effect of sticking to the principles and the game plan possession by possession.
Yeah, now 8 straight games of at least 50 points in the paint for the
Mhm.
Thunder. That's its bread and butter, and that's what it wants to get to every night. Those overlapping runs, as you
Yep.
might call them in soccer, the way that Dort is cutting on the back of Giddey's drive,
Yes.
basically. It's very clever the way that the Thunder has oriented this. We've seen Aaron Wiggins make those kind of cuts as well. The defense is not expecting that type of action. It's almost like a black hole is like sucking the defenders into this like no man's land in the middle of the defense, and the Thunder's able to just run right up the back of their first driver. And so we're seeing more of those wrinkles, and we're seeing the Thunder be in sync on all of this because it has a clear identity. It knows we want to be at the front of the rim, and if there's a big tall guy standing there, then we'll kick it out and we'll shoot a 3-pointer.
Can we? I want to go a little bit deeper into this because this was something that it took me a while to understand watching the Thunder play.
Yeah.
When someone attacks downhill, right? Basketball principle says move out of the way. Don't crowd. Don't add more bodies to the lane because you need to open up more opportunities. What OKC has managed to do is space the floor within a very small space, it feels like. When Josh Giddey attacks to the paint and Lou Dort is also sprinting into the paint, you would think, in my brain, I was taught, playing collegiate basketball, don't cut while someone else is driving into the lane. But for OKC, they have really found a nice rhythm and balance of finding spaces and creases in the defense and making those small plays within kind of their flow offensively, but also driving downhill. And you still have guys spacing out. You still have Isaiah Joe behind the 3-point line. You still have J-Dub in the opposite corner to throw across the floor if you want to. But all of those options are still there, but they're not piling on top of each other, which is in my brain. I have to get out of thinking that way sometimes, thinking, why are you cutting while Josh Giddey is attacking downhill?
Well, and this is such a huge benefit of having 3 of your top playmakers on your team are 6'6" or taller.
Yep.
And so as they're attacking, if Josh is attacking on the strong side headed towards the corner, he can see whether there's a bounce pass available for the cutter on that strong side going baseline or the guy on the weak side coming baseline. Aaron Wiggins makes that cut all the time. Or the I like to call this the Ousmane Dieng special from the opposite angle. Sometimes it just all depends on how the opposing team's defense is oriented in its help shell. And the Thunder knows there are these trigger points that if the shell is oriented this way or that way, I'm the man who's supposed to cut. And seeing those pictures, recognizing it, and then the Thunder's playmakers having the vision to see over the top and figure out, okay, this is the guy that's cutting. This is how the shell is oriented. It's made it so that OKC has been able to just get so many of these catches on the move. And a lot of times it will also result in either easy finishes or the next one, right? That next help defender comes over and then they get the spray out. This is another thing that Uz does really well is he can catch the ball at that elbow area. If a defender comes over, he's spraying out the next one to the corner. Yeah,
it goes to show the size, also the creativity of the passers on the roster, guys like Josh Giddey who are willing to make some really fearless passes, and then also creative cutters. It goes both ways, right? Guys who are willing to selflessly make the cut even though they know they might not get it and it might open something up for the guy behind them. It just all works so well together. It's just a symbiotic relationship between all of these guys, and I encourage you to really watch these guys offensively when they're in the half court, because the movement for the Thunder, it opens up so much on the floor, and it shows in a game like Phoenix where OKC had 2 guys scoring 30 points, but they were able to do so because of the offense and the style of play that this group plays with.
Yeah, and the key now for the Thunder moving forward is maintaining this every night. We talked about the Sacramento game. They didn't have that level of precision and focus and discipline and energy for all 48 minutes of that game. They had it for some stretches. They didn't have the type of defensive focus and resilience and toughness for the entirety of that Phoenix game. But when they unlocked it in that fourth quarter, they showed what their ceiling was on that end. Now, as this team continues to develop, continues to rack up more of these experiences, it's, how can you be more consistent and string together okay, hey, we did it for 35 minutes this game. Can we do it for 38 next game? Can we do it for 41 next game? Can we do, and figuring out how long and how sustainable that process is for them.
Yeah, and it only happens with time and going through experiences. And it's really fun to see those experiences happen in real time, like we saw in Sacramento and Phoenix. So many great things to take away from our time in Phoenix, including a time we got to sit down, a very special time, honestly. We got to sit down. It was incredible. Getting a chance to talk to Lindy Waters III, who is of Kiowa and Cherokee descent. He is such a prominent figure here in Oklahoma, period, just because of he grew up in Norman, he went to Oklahoma State, and he's just such a fixture here within this local community. But he also cherishes so much his Native American heritage, and we had a chance to talk to him while we were in Phoenix about just that. Here's that interview. All right, we are now coming to you live from Phoenix, Arizona, where we are joined by our good friend, Lindy Waters III. Lindy, first of all, thank you so much for making the time and joining us on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we know it was a late night, long day of practice today too, so appreciate you being here and being willing to kind of have this really nice follow-up conversation. Off the top of the pod, we heard some of the things that you had to say just about your background and growing up, and so we really want to delve a little bit more into that.
Yeah, we had a couple of pieces that kind of stood out to us just now that as we're reflecting on Native American Heritage Month. And one is you told us that you and your family would go to Tahlequah and spend a lot of time there. Can you set the scene of what those trips were like and what they meant to you?
Yeah, so we would, caravan with all of our families, cousins, close relatives, and we would, check into our hotel. And then we would make our way out to the stomp grounds, and it's really tight knit out there. So if you're not part of the family, or if you aren't blood, then you're not allowed to come into the stomp grounds. So they have a bunch of guys at the front gate that check to make sure who you are, and then they tell you, excuse me, they tell you where you're where you're supposed to go, and then we come in and. They'll butcher a hog early in the morning, and then they'll pass it out to all the families, and we just cook and sing and dance and just hang out with our families. So
you knew everybody that was at the stomp grounds then, because it was such a sounds like very, very tight knit.
Yeah. So everybody from all over, you'd make your way across, talk to different families and get to know them and kind of make those connections to our ancestors and where we came from.
You'd find a way to play some sports though too, right?
Yeah.
What kind of games would you all play?
We played stickball. Yeah. Those were rough.
Tell us about stickball, because I'm sure a lot of people, you've told me about this and it sees very, very aggressive, but I'm not sure everybody knows about it.
It's like lacrosse, but there's just one pole with a fish, like a wooden fish that spins, and so when you hit it, it like spins around and you get points. But the women, they don't have to use the sticks. They can just pick it up with their hands. And there's no such thing as fouls or it's just like you get hit and you just keep playing. So we'd play early in the morning and sometimes late at night till the sun goes down. But those were the days.
You have like cousins that are around your age, or were you like one of the older ones, one of the younger ones? Like, where did you kind of fit in the bigger family dynamic on that side?
I would say I was one of the younger ones. Besides my younger sister, we were the youngest ones out there. Most of my cousins were older. They were already in their teens, closing in on their 20s. So, but I got out there and wasn't afraid to battle.
Yeah, what'd you learn from them, and not just in stickball, but like how they kind of maybe carried their heritage with them, and lived in Oklahoma City, but also had this kind of part of their background that they valued?
They were very prideful, and I could see that through our whole family dynamic. We were very close, could talk about anything with each other, and we just try to love each other as much as possible.
You mentioned also, so you went to Tahlequah, that's the Cherokee side, right? Mm-hmm. And then you also mentioned Rainy Mountain, and I'm not very familiar with where that is or that location. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so That's where my Kiowa side is from, southwest Oklahoma. That's where most of my Kiowa relatives are from. And, with like deaths, sometimes we will bury our dead out there next to the church. So it's more of a sacred land than anything, but we don't visit it too often. We visit Tahlequah more often.
Yeah.
But when you did go to Rainy Mountain, that was for very sacred or special events, and it's kind of a special place.
Yeah, very special.
How about culturally, just sort of having the Kiowa side and the Cherokee side? Like how would you sort of compare and contrast those two aspects of your background and those families?
That's a good question. We try to treat them equally, but there's a lot of I don't want to say animosity, but there's just a lot of differences culturally. The powwows and stomp dances are different. How we celebrate things are different. How we pray is different. So whenever you're in your Cherokee family, it's different from your Kiowa family. So we try to treat them the same, but sometimes they can kind of overlap, and we just accept it for what it is.
What's that like for you, kind of, internalizing both of those, balancing both of those for yourself, and obviously trying to honor both as well?
I've had, I don't want to say a hard time, but getting to learn myself from having both of those sides, and also trying to learn my own side. So I think that's part of our culture, is growing into your own individual, and taking what we learn best from every side of ourselves, and just becoming a better person.
It must have been so fascinating, or trying as well, when you win the Indian of the Year award at such a young age, while you're still trying to figure out what that means to you and how you integrate that to yourself. What was that time like for you?
It was massive. I didn't realize it in the time because of how young I was. I was still in college. I was still focused on getting my degree and trying to be a better basketball player on top of that. But once I went out to the Indian Fair and kind of got that celebration and was able to receive love and then able to give it back out immediately, it really opened my eyes to what it was to be the Indian of the Year.
How did that get decided? Like how do you get named Indian of the Year? I mean, what an honor.
There's like an Indian Expo.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of nominees, and every week they'll kind of lower the list slowly over a long period of time throughout the year. And then by the end, they pick a winner. So I was in that with a bunch of people that I knew, and I didn't know until like I was being nominated as that I was even a part of conversations. So I'm grateful. It was amazing. Me and my family, we took that with love, and it was just a great time.
Did your teammates in college know that all of that was going on, or was that something that you kind of just kept a little bit closer to the vest with just your family?
They knew a little bit, but it was during the summer. So it was like going into August. So we weren't in school. We were kind of working out at the team, but for the most part, they knew a little bit, but it was for the family.
Lindy, it's obviously your heritage shaping so much of who you are as a human being and the person that we see today. But in the interview, we also heard how your heritage has shaped your love for basketball as well. And especially you told the story of being able to go out to Henrietta and play in a all native tournament there. What was your early introduction into basketball like, and what was that tournament like as well?
My early introduction, it was starting out with my dad. We would play with the Runners in Norman growing up. Very competitive. We worked out all the time, whether any sport I was playing, any season, football season, baseball season. We always managed to stay in the gym every week. And I was just having fun. I was so young. I was just having fun, just playing sports, always having some kind of ball in my hand. So once I got to middle school and started traveling a lot more out of state, and, things started to get very competitive. You start seeing more athleticism, more skill, more talent. And then you start to find yourself on better and better teams, but still don't have the same opportunity as I did when I was younger. So whenever I went and played with my Native American team out in Henrietta, I got the opportunity to be able to, go out there and get minutes and play freely and not have to worry about I get a minute here and there at the biggest tournament in the country, but in the Native tournament, it's just, we're just kind of like res ball. We're just hooping. And it was a lot more comfortable for me. And, had a great tournament, had a great turnout. And just like stickball, it's like, there's very few fouls in res ball. But you run and gun, you get up and down, you shoot the ball a lot. And that's what I like most about it.
You mentioned res ball, and it sounds like there's a very specific basketball culture just within the Native community. Can you kind of point out maybe some of the differences that you've experienced?
Yeah, res ball is, like I said, very physical. Run and gun, get up and down, shoot as many times as you can throughout the game. And, don't really, we play defense like full court. We'll trap, we'll throw, we'll just play reckless basketball at times.
What's the environment in the gym like for those games?
Oh man, people talking trash, parents going wild, coaches and everyone getting on the refs, and there's, it's just reckless.
We hear there's a lot of pressure on the coaches in this environment.
Yeah, a lot on the coaches, a lot on the refs. And it can get at times with the players as well, but for the most part, everybody bonds out there.
How have you? I mean, we saw that you brought Shay, out to the Native American Museum in OKC, that brand new, beautiful building. If you haven't been, you've got to go.
Awesome.
How have you shared, kind of some of this aspect of yourself in this part of your journey, this part of your basketball journey with these Thunder teammates?
Yeah, I have, and I'm actually quite grateful that they're so interested in part of my culture. I get asked questions every week about different tribes and where we come from and how we practice things, and I'm grateful that they're inquisitive about that.
That's so cool. And I imagine their questions probably bring up more questions for you to ask your family too. They might have questions and things that you haven't thought about. Are there any examples of something that one of your teammates has asked you that has caused you to think, well, actually, I don't know. I need to ask my parents about that.
I think I was talking to Vanessa 2 or 3 weeks ago, and she was working on somebody, but she started asking whenever the movie Killers of the Flower Moon came out. That was big for our Osage people, and I don't know a lot about Osage. I know about the events that had happened, but the specific details of it, that was something that I needed to go back and kind of research myself and ask my older family members about, what had happened, because they were, a lot more knowledgeable about it.
Vanessa, one of our incredible, people on the training staff here with the Thunder. I imagine, Lindy, you have a very large tattoo of Jim Thorpe as well. Do you get a lot of questions? Has that sparked conversation as well with amongst your teammates?
Yeah, not so much about my teammates, because I think they all knew.
Yeah.
Whenever I put it on my leg, but just out in the world, people see it all the time, and most of them know it's Jim Thorpe, but some people also don't know. Some people also think, they're like, did you tattoo yourself on your leg? That is crazy.
No way.
Yeah, it's also, just kind of opens the door for me to tell them about, my inspiration.
How can you speak to how big of an inspiration Jim Thorpe has been in your life and in your journey as an athlete?
He was, there from day one. We were in the Jim Thorpe building at OU whenever my dad had worked there. And we would hold all different kind of celebrations, stomp dances, meetings. We would cook fry bread and give out to Native American kids. And we'd have like organizational things there. And I was just a little kid running around the building. But it was a Jim Thorpe building. And whenever they had decided to build a new one and tear that one down, my dad had got some of the old paintings before they tore it down because they were just going to demolish everything and not save anything. So he ran in there, got a couple of them, and then he ended up putting them on my wall.
Wow.
Along with like, a trophy shelf and then pictures of Jim Thorpe, of him doing different things. He's like punting a football, and then there's another one where he's like about to run in the track race, and he just did everything. And I just wanted to be like a well-rounded athlete like him. So I just tried to play every sport growing up.
Not just his imagery, but I mean, having gone to your childhood home, your house is like a museum. I mean, there is stuff everywhere on the walls in your house. Can you just kind of describe like all the, I wouldn't even call them artifacts, but like maybe family heirlooms, but then in addition to that, some of these great pieces of artwork that you all have in your house that honor some prominent Native Americans?
Yeah, so we have, our Pendletons. Those are pretty sacred to us. We have stickball sticks. We have bundles. We have old pictures of our ancestors. It is kind of like a museum now I think about it. There's a lot of paintings. There's a lot of pottery. There's just anything you can think of. Eagle feathers on the wall. There's everything.
It's so humbling to see how much pride you have in your heritage and your culture. What has it been like for you being in this position, playing in the NBA, and seeing the impact that you have on other Native kids who maybe want to follow in your footsteps as well?
It gives me hope to be able to be that for them. After I was named Indian of the Year, I kind of took it a little more serious to be that inspiration for those kids, that role model, because I know we don't get a lot of chances. Even in college, there's not many Native American players. So I think then that's when I started taking it a little more seriously and trying to be a positive force in the community for them.
We had our Native American Heritage Night celebrations at Paycom Center a few games ago. I was just curious, are you so locked into what you've got to do from your job standpoint, or were you able to absorb any of what was going on in the arena that night?
I was locked in for the most part, but there was one point where I had glanced up at the Jumbotron and they had said Lindy Waters is Kiowa and Cherokee. And I just saw it for a split second, and then I realized, there's a lot of Native people here. I started looking around. Halftime, we had dancers. And then I remembered the color guard with the flags. They were from Riverside. And like just everything started to make sense. I was like, oh, I guess it's Native American night. I think somebody was like, hey, Lindy, like they had your name up, like you should have waved. And I was so locked in at the game plan at the time that I hadn't realized.
After the invocation, I think that the invocation was delivered by one of our Native American community members. And then there was just a symphony of this sound that came from the arena. And I just thought that was so cool. It made me feel like, what a community Oklahoma is, and what a specific, unique identity that this community is able to tap into. I don't know if you noticed that moment when that happened after the invocation.
I didn't.
No. Locked in. It's game time. But it does bring up a good point of like, you could be playing anywhere, right? But you're here. You're in Oklahoma specifically, and with your background, with your heritage, and also being local here as well, being able to tap into this community, just how special is that?
It's unheard of. It's being able to play for your hometown and be a part of the community that I grew up in is it's just incredible, to be honest. It's just kind of leaves me speechless at times, but I would just say it's a dream.
I love hearing this from you and being able to talk to this a little bit more in depth. I know Nick got a chance to talk to you at Media Day, and so having you back on the podcast and hearing all of this from you, this has been so special, Lindy. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
we really appreciate
Thank you
it.
for everything.
Yeah.
Don't forget that if you live in Oklahoma City and you want to vote in the Keep OKC Big League election on December 12th, you have to make sure you're registered to vote.
Yeah, and that voter registration deadline is this Friday, November 17th. And so if you want to register online, you can go to ok.gov/elections.
Such a special interview with Lindy Waters III. And we want to thank him so much for taking the precious time in Phoenix to come sit and talk to us about something that clearly means so much to him. And we learned a lot from that interview, and we really hope that you all were able to take something away as well.
I just really appreciate his candor and openness and willingness to share his background, his feelings about his family, and all the things that have made this journey so remarkable for him as it relates to that background, how he's been able to share it with his teammates as well. I just thought that was all really special, and really grateful for Lindy.
And I'd encourage you, if you haven't been to the Native American Museum here in Oklahoma City, go check it out, because you might recognize a jersey that's in there. One Lindy Waters III goes to show just how important he is to this Oklahoma community and just how much his heritage means to him as well. All right, before we let you go, we got to let you know what is coming up for the Thunder. But not just the Thunder, we're in the Thunder basketball universe here. Let's talk about the OKC Blue, who have officially kicked off their season. If you're not watching Blue games, if you're not tapped into the Thunder's G League affiliate, you should be, because you might recognize some familiar faces. And the Thunder, or the Blue, have their first home game coming up as well.
That's right. On Monday night, Ousmane Dieng just got assigned to the OKC Blue. He's been in a small-ish role, 10 minutes or so a game for the Thunder. This is an opportunity to just really let him rock, as Mark Dagnall would say. And you're going to see this throughout the year. And we've seen it in past years, too. I mean, we talked about on a recent podcast just Jay Will and what the Blue experience meant for him. He was with the G League for most of the year and then comes in and is a starter pretty much for the last 2 or 3 months of last year. So really good opportunities for fans, young Thunder fans, to be able to come down and see sort of that next wave and next generation of players. We spent so much time talking about Lou today. He's a prime example of a guy that got his start in the G League as well. So you're definitely going to come out. They play Monday night and then during the day on Wednesday. So definitely going to want to come down to Paycom Center, and full slate of games for you this year. You can go to okcblue.com.
Be sure to go check them out. Those games are just a lot of fun, period. Even if, Ousmane Dieng isn't down there, or even if a Thunder player isn't down there, those guys, they battle hard, they compete. They're playing the same style of basketball that the Thunder is playing. And those guys, they're just really fun to watch, and always great games. The Thunder also has a couple of big games coming up. They play on Tuesday at home against the San Antonio Spurs. That game is not going to be on Bally Sports Oklahoma. It's going to be on TNT. That is a nationally televised game. It's also an in-season tournament game. So a lot going to be happening for OKC. This is going to be another test for them to kind of cut through the noise and be able to just battle the game that's out there on the floor. It's just a one-game homestand. This is kind of a wacky schedule, because we just came from the West Coast for 2 games. We're home for 1 game, and then we go back out to the West Coast because the Thunder is facing the Golden State Warriors in a little mini-series, back-to-back games there on Thursday and then again on Saturday.
Correct. Yep.
But that last Saturday game, it's the first end of a back-to-back, because the Thunder's going north to take on the Portland Trail Blazers on Sunday.
Yeah, so this is a really tough stretch for OKC. Gonna definitely show what this team is made of. You got to go play a team like Golden State twice up there. You're gonna be potentially done with the Warriors here before Thanksgiving.
Right.
So certainly gonna have some opportunity to go up against a hungry team that's still trying to find itself in Golden State. Thunder's still trying to find itself too, and so really good chance to also maybe get one back over after that very tough loss at home in the first in-season tournament.
You know the Thunder's watching film on that, getting ready for those 2 matchups out in the Bay Area. But we want to thank you so much for watching and listening. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Thank you so much to Lindy Waters III for taking the time out in Phoenix. Thank you so much to our producer, Matt Bishop. And until next time, Thunder up, and catch you later.